safety on the roads and water top of mind as many head to the cottage this long weekend.
Just remember to make sure your young children, 12 and under, are wearing a life jacket when they're out on the boat.
We'll tell you about Joshua's Law, a private member's bill making its way through Queen's Park, pushing to make life jackets mandatory for kids under 12.
This motion is going after the most vulnerable people in our community.
Panhandling crackdown, a new strategy to tackle homelessness in Barrie, raises concern for some in the community.
How can we make the world a better place with that restaurant?
We'll take you inside a Toronto restaurant serving Korean fried chicken and also catering to people who are neurodivergent and on the autism spectrum.
This is CBC Saturday News.
We're happy you're here with us this long weekend. Cities across Ontario and beyond continue struggling to address the homelessness crisis. Barrie has a new approach that's raising concerns. As Greg Ross shows us, part of the strategy includes cracking down on panhandling.
In an effort to address what Barrie City Council calls chronic homelessness, a motion was passed unanimously Wednesday that includes some drastic measures.
Prohibit the distribution of food and grocery products in public spaces without the use of a permit. Methods to prohibit the payment to panhandlers on city streets, intersections, and highway ramps.
This motion gives power to the city's bylaw enforcement to fine anyone who gives food or money to someone living on the streets.
This motion is going after the most vulnerable people in our community.
Former Barrie City Councillor Keenan Elwin says this is a failure by the city to take responsibility.
Well, I think it's a way of shifting blame to individuals experiencing homelessness and the organizations that support these people. Instead of taking responsibility as local government and as elected officials for the housing crisis and doing what they should do as policymakers.
The motion also includes things like increasing funding for cooling and warming centers and expanding meal programs. But some advocates for the homeless say overall it does more harm than good.
And then it was just so shocking that the second half of the motion is so violent and harmful and cruel.
A sentiment shared by many we spoke with in the city today.
I think it's ridiculous. Coming out of a poverty situation, I know what it's like to struggle on the street, and I've been grateful for people who have helped me along the ways.
We need to help lift people up, not acknowledge that people are suffering and just kind of walk away.
Councillors who voted in favor of this motion say the impact this issue is having on residents and businesses must also be taken into consideration.
We've heard firsthand from businesses that are shutting down due to decreased foot traffic and a perceived fear of our downtown core. We're hearing more and more stories of trespassing, home invasion, vandalism, aggressive behavior in public spaces.
According to statistics from the city of Barrie, as of January 2022, they had more than 350 unhoused people living on the streets or in city shelters. Greg Ross, CBC News, Barrie.
In other news, a woman is dead after a stabbing in Brampton last night.
Officers arrived on scene and located an adult female suffering from obvious signs of trauma. Police officers alongside paramedics commenced life-saving efforts. However, the female was pronounced deceased on scene.
Now, officers tracked down the suspect nearby. Police say the two knew each other. There is no word yet on charges. Rallies across Canada and the world today protesting the execution of 3 men in Iran suspected of being anti-government protesters. Officials claim the men confessed. Families say they were tortured. Ithil Musa takes us to a rally in Toronto.
In cities around the world, including Toronto, Halifax, and Montreal, people gathered to demonstrate against executions in Iran.
Down with Islamic Republic!
According to the United Nations, 580 people were executed last year, and those accused of participating in protests that swept the nation last fall are among the dead.
Innocent people are getting executed, killed under torment, torture, for no reason without due trial.
Amnesty International agrees. The human rights organization says 3 men who were executed on Friday after being implicated in the deaths of security forces last year during anti-government protests were subjected to unfair trials and allegedly tortured.
This is a regime that was built on physical elimination on any and all opponents since its inception in 1979.
Massive protests broke out in Iran last September after the death of Mahsa Amini. The 22-year-old Kurdish woman died while in police custody for allegedly wearing her head covering improperly. It sparked a worldwide movement. But one prominent Canadian activist says more action is needed.
Human rights is not just a slogan. Condemnation is not enough. Or saying that we are concerned or we are worried, it's not enough.
Many demonstrators here are urging Canada to designate Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist entity under Canada's criminal code. There are also calls to ban Iran from chairing the UN Human Rights Council Social Forum in November. Iran's ambassador to the UN was chosen, say human rights activists, despite the country's record of repression. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Sophia is with us now. A rainy start to your Saturday, kind of a morning to sleep in, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, not really the unofficial start of summer when you've got the thunderstorms rolling through for the first time in the overnight period. I'll tell you which day will be the better one to do the barbecues, though. But yeah, kind of a cool, rainy start to the Victoria Day long weekend. Some little pockets of sun are out there right now. Still raining, though, for those of you in the east end of the GTA. Some heavy slugs of rain coming in and wrap around up to the Sudbury area right now. The garden certainly perked up. Many of the farmers were happy to get that rain, and it really did a lot to thwart all of the hazy, smoky skies that we had this past week. But when you see 51 millimeters of rainfall, it's not really the unofficial start of summer, is it? We did have those thunderstorms roll through, especially through the Oak Ridges Marine and up towards the Algonquin area where you saw about 40 millimeters of rain. So that 20 to 40 really verified. Here's a look at archived radar at some of those kind of beefy thunderstorms that we had through the overnight period, an indication of how much surface instability we had. Did you hear the thunder come through around the Vaughan, Mississauga, and the Brampton area? Still a chance for a few rumbles of thunder for those of you this afternoon and evening in parts of eastern Ontario. But really, Sunday is the bounce back day where you can have the barbecues firing, lots of sunshine, above seasonal. High UV, though, but coming up in the long range, I'll tell you about the sharp cool down in store for you on Monday. Shannon.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Sophia. We'll see you shortly.
Always.
Lots of people heading up north to enjoy the long weekend. The OPP reminding people be patient on the road. Police also stressing the importance of water safety and always wearing a life jacket while boating.
You know, it can save your life. Put it on. Having it in the boat is not going to help you when you need it fast.
Police say 29 people lost their lives last year. Only 2 had a life jacket on. When you look at the last 5 years, there's been 130 deaths. Only 11 of those people were wearing a life jacket. So if you're out on the water this long weekend, your boat will need to have a life jacket for every passenger, but nobody, even kids, actually has to wear one. That could soon change. A private member's bill is making its way through Queen's Park. Goldie Gamari is the MPP behind the motion. She joins us now. Thanks for joining us, Goldie.
Thank you for having me on.
So this is being called Joshua's Law, and I know you've been working closely with his mom to make this happen. Can you tell us about this family and what happened to Josh?
Yeah, it's a very tragic story. So back in 2018, Joshua, who was 11 years old at the time, was out on a boat with his family and some friends, and he was wearing a life jacket for most of the day. But at some point in the afternoon, he took off his life jacket, and then the boat capsized in an accident, and everyone survived, including an 8-year-old girl who was wearing a life jacket, except for Joshua. And it took divers over 40 days to recover his body. So it's a very tragic story. And ever since then, his mother, Kara McNulty, has been advocating to make life jackets mandatory for children 12 and under across Canada through her initiative, Life Jackets for Life. And so the reason I named my private member's bill Joshua's Law is to honor Joshua's memory, but also to honor and recognize the efforts that Cara McNulty has gone through and has done since 2018. Because I think, I'm really inspired by her perseverance and her strength to take such a very deep and personal loss and tragedy and turn it into something positive that would benefit children in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. Her strength is incredible. And I know for a lot of people watching right now, they're going to be listening to this and they're probably shocked, wondering, how is this not mandatory already?
Yeah, I mean, when I first found out about it, so I have to backtrack a little bit here. This bill was first introduced by Norm Miller, the MPP for Parry Sound Muskoka, back in 2021. And when he first introduced it, we were all kind of taken aback and we were all shocked that life jackets aren't mandatory for children in Ontario. So his bill had full party support, unanimous support from all politicians of all stripes and colors. But it never made it into law because the election happened and Norm is now retired. But through his advocacy and through his efforts, he connected with someone named Cara McNulty. And when he found out Cara is a constituent of mine here in Ottawa, he connected me with her. And so that's why I decided to reintroduce Joshua's Law, because even now when I speak about this legislation and I bring it up with other politicians or with general public or even with reporters, everyone's shocked and everyone has the same reaction that I initially had, which is really, this isn't already the law. So, I think it's just a common sense piece of legislation. And life jackets are mandatory in the United States, actually. So every single state has some sort of mandatory life jacket law for children. Even those states where seatbelts aren't mandatory, life jackets still are.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's quite something. And like we said, it will be news to a lot of folks. This has been such a long road for Josh's family. How are they feeling knowing that this has now had second reading at Queen's Park?
I've been in constant contact with Cara, Josh's mother, and we're talking quite frequently. And she's very hopeful and she's very supportive of the bill. And what she has said to me is that Joshua's Law is a bill that will save lives, hands down. I mean, the stats show that 80% of drowning accidents occur because someone wasn't wearing a life jacket. So just by making sure children are wearing life jackets, that can lower those numbers drastically, because we're not just talking about numbers either. Every single number is a person, it's a loss, it's a tragedy. And so Cara's very hopeful and she's been working with me on this, and she's thrilled that the bill is named Joshua's Law to honor her son.
We're almost out of time, but how soon do you think it could be before we see this go through?
I mean, I would love to see this become legislation before we rise for the summer. But given that there's only 2 weeks left in the legislature, I don't think that it's going to happen. But I think the fact that we're talking about this and raising awareness is really important. It's just such a very preventable tragedy. And I think if we just make sure that young children are wearing life jackets, we can have some fun on the water and be safe.
Yeah, no, it's important advice and it's critical work that you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us, Goldie.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Goldie Gamari is the MPP behind the motion Joshua's Law. Fireworks are back at Ashbridges Bay. Police say they have a plan to avoid what happened last year.
We're going to have police officers in police cars, police officers on bikes, police officers on bicycles, police officers on horseback, and we're going to have police officers in police boats just off the beach here patrolling up and down the waterways.
You may remember long weekend celebrations last year got out of control. 2 men were shot, another stabbed, officers were hurt, even a police horse was injured. Over that weekend, 24 people were arrested. This year, police reminding everyone personal fireworks and other fires are not allowed. Well, if you have plans to head to Niagara Falls, you now have more round-trip transit options from Toronto. Starting today, GO Transit is adding 12 weekly round trips from Union. Weekdays will increase by 2 daily round trips, and weekend service will increase by 1 daily round trip. You can find out more information at gotransit.ca. We are heading into a short break, but stay with us. A new Toronto restaurant is serving up Korean fried chicken and an inclusive dining experience. Talia Ricci takes us inside Sarang Kitchen.
My husband came up with the idea of wanting to start a restaurant because he's a chef. It made me think about, how can we make the world a better place? I'm Jennifer Loh, and I'm the co-founder of Sarang Kitchen. Sarang in Korean means love. We chose this name because, our mission came about because of the love that I had for my students and also our food. Our chef puts in a lot of effort into making sure the food is great. Our specialty is definitely Korean fried chicken.
So when we enter the restaurant here, I see this shelf. Tell me a bit about some of the things here.
So this is our sensory box shelf. We have sensory boxes that are readily available to anyone who needs it. We have things like fidget toys, we have mindfulness breathing cards, and we also have what we call AAC, an application that non-speaking people use to communicate with. And we also have weighted blankets, have books about diversity and autism. The photos of my students here, so these are the ones that inspired, the whole idea. This is my class for about 4 years when I was teaching in New Zealand. When we get really exhausted and tired, we just look at this wall and we get energized again, knowing that this is why we are, working day and night to make this happen.
What ways can noise and light be overstimulating for some people?
For people on the spectrum, it can be really jarring because they have very sensitive hearing, and lights as well. Like for us, it might be okay, but for them, they might be really sensitive to bright lights. Beanbag chair is really important. I realized that a lot of my students, to get them when they're anxious and they need a moment, they really seek out a beanbag chair because I guess it's that whole feeling of being, enveloped by the beanbag, and with the weighted blanket on their lap, you give them a few minutes on that with the noise-canceling headphones, and you can see that whole tension melt away in their body. Over here, we have a sensory room, a separate room that I think is one of the most important facility that we have here. We have a sliding door that we can close, and it will block most of the noise that's outside. Currently, we have 9 staff on our payroll, and 4 of them are neurodiverse. And it has been awesome. They come with their own set of talents, and it's really refreshing to hear their point of view.
Everybody's super friendly because they know what kind of place this is. We have so many customers that came in with neurodivergent kids. And it's been so great because they can actually come in and chill here because we have all of those little knickknacks for kids to play with, and kids feel safe and secure here, and parents can relax. Yeah.
So a lot of these changes that you've done seem like they're not even that expensive or that elaborate. But what difference has it made for some of the people that have dined here?
They say they feel seen for the first time, that a restaurant is designed for them. We've had parents come in here and they talk to me and they start crying because it just means so much that now they have a safe space, that they can go to. They feel accepted, and I think that's what we are trying to do, to make them feel accepted and also create that awareness about neurodiversity.
A sprinting icon and the last Canadian man to win Olympic gold in the 100-meter dash is now joining in one of the bids to buy the Ottawa Senators. Donovan Bailey teaming up with Snoop Dogg and producer Nico Sparks.
Well, I love the fact that Nico is someone who's a fearless entrepreneur. He's an investor. He takes chances. And the fact that he's he's trying to encompass so much of the community and doing a lot of things for culture in the purchase of this sports team. So for me, it's probably the greatest life balance of a team that I would see that would purchase a sports team.
The Senators were put up for sale after the death of owner Eugene Melnick last March. Estimates suggest the team could be sold for more than $1 billion. It's been reported that a total of 4 bids were submitted. Now for fans, it's the waiting game. The emotional roller coaster continues for Leafs fans, many still shocked after the team announced they're parting ways with now former general manager Kyle Dubas.
I was kind of sad to hear that he was leaving. I knew that changes were coming, but I didn't really expect to see the changes happen at the level of the GM.
At the end of the day, he did have that long leash. You know, it was nice to get out of the first round, but I mean, if you only win one game in the first round, did you really go to the first round?
Being a coach is a tough job. You know, they got the farthest that the Leafs have gotten in 20 years, and he gets fired for it.
I'm pretty upset. I think he did a lot for this city and this team, and just to get no respect back and get fired. I don't know. I didn't like it, but you know, I believe in the Leafs. I believe what they want to do, and I trust the process.
Dubas joined the Leafs in 2014 as assistant GM at age 28. His departure leaves a number of questions about the future of the Buds, but those questions likely won't be answered until the Leafs find a replacement GM. Yeah, speaking of roller coasters, this forecast you're talking about sounds like a bit of a doozy.
You know what? I'm maybe hyping it a little bit. There's a lot of sunshine to come, but folks, there is a cool down to come on Monday. In general, though, it's going to be a great week for you to get all that gardening done and maybe hit up a couple golf courses as well. After this rain clears, it was certainly the kind of day for many that you wanted to be indoors with the snacks and the board games and maybe some crafts for the kids. It is clearing, but not without leaving a dent and adding a few millimeters to some of our lake levels out there. We are well on the way of joining March and April so far in May to having above normal rainfall amounts, as you know. Sunday will not be that day. That it will be rainy, though. Maybe a few stray showers to mention northeast end of the GTA around the lakeshore regions, but otherwise, not even a cloud in sight for many of you. The sun will be shining, and it will be a brilliant bounce back day. Enjoy temperatures that are anywhere from 3 to 5 degrees above seasonal. You'll maybe even hit a 25 in the Windsor area, 21 in Ottawa for Sunday. It's the barbecue day. Maybe even head out for a nice hike in the woods and see the trilliums. They're out right now. High UV index, though, so layer on that sun protection if you're heading out. And then the elephant in the room will be Monday. We'll talk about that cool down in a minute. But first, look at the brilliant hours of sunshine we have to look forward to for this upcoming work week. So definitely the week to go out and plant that garden after you get over this cool down we've been talking about for Monday. So you'll really notice that brisk east wind. You might even want a sweater into the evening hours if you're headed out for any fireworks on Monday, Shannon.
Yeah, it's been the week of layers. I feel like I don't know how to dress these days. It's 2 jackets.
Typical Canadian spring, a little bit of everything in one day.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sophia. That's our show. We'll see you again tomorrow night at 11.